Do you really think that my shady financial industry would have my name on it?
Comcoin.
Yeah, to a moon. It would probably have my name in there backwards at some point. There'd be something in there so they could have like the reveal in the movie of
You're Saravak.
yeah. Just it's much easier because there's fewer letters.
Care about something.
It was my favorite thing is everyone I'm sure playing that game immediately saw the
Covaris?
game and just thought, hey, I really enjoyed Baldur's Gate 1. It was a lot of fun.
If we did that, it's like, who is Withers?
Are you about to spoil Baldur's Gate 3 for me? Can't spoil it more than the developers did. Hey-o.
Spoil the game that you still won't play.
Oh, but maybe. Tried playing it with Wars, I've tried playing it with friends, I've tried playing it. That sounds like a diss on Wars, which it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, it really does sound like you have a
Yeah.
problem with wars.
Yeah. I'm anti-war. I tried playing it with my friend Jules from here. I tried playing it on my own. It's just so boring. Not gonna yuck it for anyone else, but it's just so boring for me.
If you just want to play Act 1, I know somebody.
That's the only act I've played all the way through. I think that my biggest save, I'm at the elevator out of Act 1. Is it an elevator?
The Grim Porch.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah. So I just done that, and then at some point I lost interest. Although that was the run I enjoyed the most. Like up until then, I was mostly enjoying it.
Me and Banana were playing, and he's got so much experience, and I've got a little bit of experience, and I have a tendency to do it a certain way, and he obviously already knows where everything is, and I'm like, where is Banana? And he's over there grabbing this, grabbing that. He's like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm like, where did he go? I don't even know where Banana went.
In Act 1, there's a lot of really shitty gear that I consolidate and sell. And then there's a few like really good items.
There's a whole Reddit topic on it. I will be bookmarking this for later.
I can't wait until you look at your bookmarks and you're like, why the did I save this?
Banana. I did just open my bookmarks thing, and the most recent one is an article from Zoe.com, whatever that is. And it's called Fart or Poop? How does your rectum know the difference? That, I'm not going to question why I saved it, because obviously I've saved that, just in case. But I'm really glad that it's the most recent one. Because the one before that is just like my college careers service, which would have been really boring to look up. But this is good shit.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AM Komnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
But yeah, so if you want to, we can go over the whole, similarities between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 3 that we found. It's not going to be all inclusive.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an audience of people who would be curious to know what is a carryover from previous games, and like don't really have the experience playing them to know. So I think that could be a good video.
Well, welcome to yet another one of the Gamers Advocate Sans Com edition. And as per requirement, we're going to be going over Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. That's all we got.
That's all we got. Now, I'm pretty sure that with me and Banana kind of get together, there's lots of games that we've played in the same genre, in the same title, same series. But we don't want to go over anything accidentally that Com may have gone over, because then we don't want to on purpose exclude him. But we know Baldur's Gate he hasn't really dove into. So it's easy for us to kind of fall back on and talk about. Plus, we also like it. So
It's the easiest topic to discuss without bullying Com.
yeah. Well, we can bully Com. And then, he's doing Morrowind right now. And I've kind of said, it's like, oh, then when Banana's not available, me and Com can go over Morrowind. So that works too.
Joke's on you. I'm always available.
Yeah. And Morrowind's one of those, like, a relic of its time. And when you play it, you definitely feel the mechanics. It's like, this doesn't feel great to play. The whole like hack and slash, it's not real time. You know, you'll hit something and you'll miss, but there's no, it'll look like you hit it, but you actually missed.
Yeah, there's no difference between a hit and a miss in terms of like the animation. It's just kind of this back end calculation that is performed that you don't really have any insight into.
So there's a lot of people that just that find that really janky, and they just can't get over some of the mechanics in Morrowind. But when you do play it through, you're like, oh wow, there is a great game underneath all of this.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games, kind of like Baldur's Gate, that does a really good job of providing you with the means of digging into the lore as much as you want to. It doesn't bombard you with all of that stuff and, you know, lock you into cutscenes or little sequences where you have to interact with it. But they've programmed a lot into the game that if you're curious to go look for, you can find, and it's worth your time. There's a payoff to it if you do look for it.
Yeah, Let's Plays are hard because of that, because it's almost like you are trying to record on the fly and give a narrative, but you know enough, but you also want to paint a scene, but you don't have the words to contextualize the scene.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. So that's why I don't do a lot of them.
And there's also like the pacing struggle where I have, you know, the game going on, there's dialogue in the game. I might be trying to explain a game mechanic that I'm using at the same time that dialogue pops up. And then the dialogue might advance on its own. And I've, you know, completely missed my opportunity to read it out for the audience because I was rambling about something else.
But I do like your approach with recognizing when you do make a mistake sometimes. Like, pretty hilarious. Like, Morbo, are you hurt? No, I'm fine. Or yes, I'm fine. No, I mean, are you unhurt? That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I definitely remember that one.
Well, it's weird.
It was just such a weird way to ask that question. Are you unhurt?
Yes, I think I am. I think I'm. And then
how do you feel about double negatives?
And it's like, it's weird that you interrupted me in the middle of my answer, but okay. Yeah, but Banana's great about, like, I couldn't do that. I could not pull that off. I would be like, okay, time to do a retake. That would be me.
Yeah, there have definitely been times. It's usually when I'm trying to like explain something that's a little more disconnected from the game. So like my strategy for grinding or something along those lines, where like I might do a retake just because I don't want to waste people's time when I'm trying to explain, you know, something that's just kind of an objective fact. There's no like performance to it. But at the same time, like most of the entertainment factor of the Let's Play is me screwing up. So I don't want to take too many of those out.
Well, as you mentioned before, we need to bridge all of this information to Baldur's Gate. But what we're specifically going to be doing is connecting the old with the new. And when I think of like things that are the same, I'm thinking specifically the city of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. Because there's a lot about that city that is not the same.
Right. Right.
But there are those landmark like structures, those landmark maybe like quarters of the city that feel exactly the same as they did in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Well, Baldur's Gate 1. And I think for people who are playing Baldur's Gate 3 as their first introduction to the Baldur's Gate series, it probably won't land for them. Things like, you know, Worm's Crossing being that bridge as you enter into the city of Baldur's Gate. And now you're starting to see the expansion beyond the walls of Baldur's Gate into Rivington, which is just outside the city. You're kind of seeing that, like, the limitation that they encountered in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, where it's a walled-in city. They can only build so much before they're up against the wall, and now you have kind of a little shanty town being built just outside the city. But that bridge, that was in Baldur's Gate 1. You could get to that bridge in Act 1, I think. You just couldn't get across it.
Yeah, and it always felt like something was missing in Baldur's Gate 1 because that bridge is so long. It's like, it's unnecessarily long. Like, they could have at least done like a cinematic and said, okay, you're here. It's not like you're doing anything special. It's not like the guard like fights you or something. He just says howdy.
Yeah, you get to almost the far side of the bridge and the guard's just like, turn around. You just wasted all that time crossing this super long bridge. Baldur's Gate is closed. Come back later.
In my head canon, Quail has been boring him to death, and he's just he's tired. He's tired.
That's probably true. Being that close to Quail for any length of time sounds pretty exhausting.
Quail is just on the other side of the end of the bridge in Baldur's Gate 1, and he's a character. So you got to take him at least once just to see what we're talking about. So
yeah, I do feel like he's one of those characters that, like, in order to get the experience, you need to put up with them for a little bit, and then you'll understand why nobody ever recruits him. If he's a gnome, then that multi-class would have to be Cleric Illusionist.
Illusionist, that's it. Okay. Yeah.
But that's a gnome-specific thing in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. That specialized mage is only available in multi-class to gnomes. So that's why I asked. But yeah, he's an interesting character. He seems very capable, but is he worth bringing with you for whatever capability he has? I don't know.
Of course, he's in Baldur's Gate 2, and he's Ares' uncle, but it's more of a like
uncle. Like almost like an adopted parent kind of situation.
But specifically Baldur's Gate 3, that Worm's Crossing is one of my favorite parts of Baldur's Gate 3. There's so much there. When I got there, I was a little frustrated because I wanted to explore under the bridge, which there's a lot there, believe it or not. And it's just like tons of traps and things. Like, well, there's got to be something here. There is a lore connection, but it's not what you think, because a lot of Baldur's Gate's history is based on being a pirate town that got civilized. And so there's a lot of these like alcoves and areas that are hidden and old ports or that have been disused over that time. So some of these smugglers still use some of these old areas. So again, it's a lore-based area, but not the way you think. Like, it's not like saying from Baldur's Gate 1 tied into Baldur's Gate 3, because that's what they did back then. They actually had a port. And you see that port in Baldur's Gate 3 as well. But Worm's Crossing frustrated me because I wanted to just get there. I saw things there. I wanted to get there. And then the story is making me do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. This is one of the few times that I got frustrated that the story was taking me somewhere I didn't want to be. And that's very rare in games. But
yeah, that's one of those things with adventure games that's I think like maybe not an obvious priority for the developers, but you almost don't want to tell your players why they want to do things as much as you want to give them a reason to want to do things and then let them go chase whatever their actual desire is. There's a video I occasionally go back and rewatch regarding the Legend of Zelda series. It talks about those kind of frustrations where, you know, there's some kind of arbitrary obstacle to going to explore where, you know, the Gorons are. There's a guard at the gate, and the guard more or less tells you why you want to get in. And you're just like, no, I want to get in because I'm exploring. I'm on an adventure. There's cool stuff there. I don't need you to tell me why I want to do this. I already want to do it. But you're actively getting in the way of the thing I want to do and telling me to go deliver a letter or something or go get somebody's permission first. Just let me explore. And I think this is one of those situations where it's just like, no, I want to move forward. I want to go explore Baldur's Gate. I want to go explore the area around the Worm's Gate. I want to go beat up Gortash or whatever it is that's available to me. Like, I don't want to jump through hoops to get to the next stage of progression.
Yeah, if they had said Worms Crossing is traversable, but you cannot be allowed into the city until you talk to Gortash, I'd have been okay with that. Because that's two totally different sections, and there's almost a reason why it's closed off to everybody. But they're closing off Worms Crossing, which I get it. It's part of Baldur's Gate. But once you make those, however you do get in Worms Crossing area, you're put into a dungeon, whatever, then you have to talk to Gortash and all that whole thing. But it's automatically taking you there. So that 5 feet in front of you, I can't get to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, it's hard for me to like contextualize this, but yes, Worms Crossing is part of the city of Baldur's Gate, but it really seemed like the city of Baldur's Gate was very different from Worms Crossing. You know, it hangs tall way over. It's this impressive feature that hangs over the river Chanthar, and you have all this stuff that's below it, and you have things hanging from the sides. It's an inn, but it's a brothel. It's kind of everything. And that's like right there. I mean, there's so much to see and do. And then Jaheira has some of her harpers that she meets right there. You have the great grandson of Nuber who's there. There's so much there on Worms Crossing. And it was like I said, one of my favorite places to be. You meet Raphael again there. It's there's so much neat stuff to do.
Yeah, they really, really drove that point home, that idea that like they're expanding beyond the limits of Baldur's Gate to the point that things are hanging off of this bridge to be part of Baldur's Gate. Like there are structures that are almost kind of falling apart with like railings and stuff just falling off, and you have, you know, platforms that don't look particularly safe, but you can jump to them and kind of, you know, find rear entrances into these structures along the bridge. They really, really did some kind of environmental storytelling to be like, yeah, the Baldur's Gate is popular. People want to be there, and there's a limited amount of space that's already occupied. So they're doing whatever they can to be close to the city, and get whatever kind of protection they think they can get from being in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, and then there was like this little mini murder mystery that's outside of the story, the main story stuff, because there's a murder mystery with that too. But there's like this little mini murder mystery that's in the area. It's just really neat. Like I said, Worms Crossing was one of my favorite places to be.
I mean, we've talked about my struggles with getting to the later parts of Baldur's Gate 3 before. Like, I've mastered Act 1.
Banana loves Act 1.
But that was definitely part of my frustration with Act 3, is like, even after I had progressed to the point where I could actually get to Act 3 and I had played through everything and I'd put in like the effort to set all the flags in the story up to that point. You know, I wanted specific people to be rescued. I wanted to have specific conversations with NPCs before I got to Act 3. So there's a lot of like groundwork you have to put in effort for before getting to that point. And then there's this obstacle before you can actually get to the place where all of that effort pays off. And that was part of the frustration there. It's like, no, I want to go explore. There's definitely stuff in Act 3 I haven't experienced yet. I kind of want to, you know, put the main quest on hold for a bit so I can just go figure out what else Baldur's Gate has to offer me. And nope, you're not allowed to. Gotta go talk to Gortash.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of things that they could have changed, but I'm glad they didn't. I think they went along with the advice from certain individuals like Ed Greenwood, creator of the whole Forgotten Realms thing. But the Flaming Fist, for instance, by the time Baldur's Gate 3, you can imagine, well, we have our own military. We don't actually need the Flaming Fist, which is a mercenary group that is essentially the military, the militia for Baldur's Gate. But they're not the true army of Baldur's Gate. Representatives of the strong arm of the Dukes.
Yeah, they're private security, basically.
Right, yeah. So, you know, they could have changed that, and they could have said, you know, we're not going to do the Flaming Fist anymore. It's going to be like a true city militia or army or whatever. But no, they kept it, and that was pretty neat too.
I mean, like, one of the biggest ones I think for me was the Temple of Baal underneath Baldur's Gate was still there, because you even kind of get that feeling in Baldur's Gate 1, and like as you progress into Baldur's Gate 2, that like people know something went down with Saravok, but they might not really understand the full story. They might not recognize that Saravok was a Baal spawn who was doing all of this to kind of retake his father's throne. They might have just thought he was, power hungry and really wanted to be the Archduke of Baldur's Gate and, hold that position. So the idea that the Temple of Baal that was under the city, that was a well-kept secret in Baldur's Gate 1, is still kind of a well-kept secret. It's still there. I thought that was a nice little touch to say that, like, there's a connecting thread there, and it makes sense within the world that, like, yeah, people probably weren't going to believe that. It sounds like this fantastic claim, like, oh yeah, there's a cult of Baal that operates underneath the city in this extraordinarily large kind of cavern where a temple is created.
Yeah. I didn't really expect to find a lot of that stuff that led me through the sewers, though. It makes sense, but I didn't really think it would be like a sewer thing because I think, I'm trying to remember. So Saravok, when he retreats and you go chase him through the streets and all that other stuff and whatnot, you do go descend into the city, of course, and then you go through that whole maze. That's the part that's memorable in Baldur's Gate, when you got to go through the maze, and it's kind of a hassle because there's tons of traps and tons of like little pesky enemies. And then you meet Saravok outside with his troop, and it almost looks like a like you said, like an altar-ish type thing, because you have like these seats almost on each side, and then he goes into his he retreats into his temple area, which has the ball symbol in the middle. So that's what you see in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's kind of interesting that it goes kind of almost just like that. It would have been neat to kind of see the whole like maze thing or whatever, something to connect those things very specifically, but it just said, oh yeah, you're in the sewers and here it is.
I feel like they kind of captured the feeling of a maze with the sewers that lead up to the Temple of Baal, but they recognize that the maze from Baldur's Gate 1 is not going to translate to Baldur's Gate 3 nearly as well. Especially in like, if you're doing any kind of combat in that maze, it's just going to get tedious to kind of move people around so that like there's not a wall between you and the enemy you're trying to hit. So yeah, I kind of get them abandoning the original maze. That being said, there are parts of the sewer under Baldur's Gate that I hated. So maybe they kept a little too much.
Yeah. They had the oozes. The oozes are like pain.
Yeah, they were. I was not thrilled to see that part. Although I was, I think initially, like, I failed my dialogue skill checks with the dude in that area and ended up fighting everybody. And I thought that was just like the extent of that encounter. No, it turns out there's more going on there. And I think that was something that was nice about Baldur's Gate 3, was that like almost everything that is kind of a unique experience, there's some explanation behind. It's not just like a random thing that was injected into the game and, hopefully you appreciated it, but doesn't really matter either way.
Yeah. Remind me though, was that a ritual to Cyric?
I think so. Which
is weird because it's right there outside of the ball, but it kind of also makes sense. So
yeah, I feel like it was definitely like somebody or worshippers of another god, and Cyric makes a lot of sense. And then I think there was some kind of like recognition that one of them had been infected, and then that more or less drove the other guy crazy to the point that like I think he killed his allies and really embraced the ooze aspect of that area.
Right. Which, if we're way off, let us know in the comments, because I don't remember specifically that, but for some reason I was thinking it was Cyric, and I thought that part was that I took more away from overthinking stuff like that than I do from the actual, like enjoying, the game. So, yeah. And so, like, Joaquin again, Temple of Joaquin. I love talking about Joaquin because she's in every game, but nobody talks about Joaquin. But yeah, you go to the Joaquin's Rest, where the Flaming Fist is the burning area. You have to save the Duke or whatever.
Counselor Flora.
Counselor, yeah. Which was interesting because I loved her character model in the beta, and she's very different in the game.
I don't think I remember her character model from the beta.
I was trying to see if I had any beta stuff that I recorded from way back when, and I don't know if I do, and I'm going to have to go back and look, but she was very different, and I thought she looked great, but wasn't a big fan of the Karlach. Also looked different. It was a different one. But not too many, but it was always interesting where they made changes. I was like, why? It's okay, but why? But yeah, Joaquin is consistent in Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and 3. Of course, the lore is that she's basically an absent god, not intentionally. At the time of, the time of reckoning? I always forget the name of it. The overlord god, turned all the gods mortal. And then some of them made it back. Some of them were killed, like Baal. And that's where Cyric comes into play. He took the place. But Joaquin
just got lost.
She tried everything she could and she thought she was clever, and she made a deal with the devil, which very much Baldur's Gate 3, if you know some of the whole Raphael stuff, makes a deal with the devil, and then now she's trapped. So, anyway, long story short, there's not much to know about Joaquin. It's not really that important, but it is interesting that she is in 1, 2, and 3, and there's references and stuff here and there. She's a goddess, a true neutral goddess of merchants and commerce, basically. So pirates love her. Businessmen love her. So, it kind of covers, because it's a true neutral. Yeah, charities love her. Yeah.
Joaquin was definitely an interesting one. We see, Joaquin has her own little temple in Mazzy's hometown in Baldur's Gate 2 as well. So you see Joaquin all over the place. One of the ones that I was kind of surprised to see again in Baldur's Gate 3 in the city of Baldur's Gate was the temple to Umberlee.
The bitch goddess.
Yeah, the bitch queen. So that was an interesting one, because I don't remember doing much there in Baldur's Gate 1. I remember it existed. I think at some point you have to talk to somebody in there for like a side quest, but I don't know that there's really too much in the way of like a story around that area. You can dig into who Umberlee is and what, her worshippers do, but I think seeing them in Baldur's Gate 3 and the story you get alongside her worshippers there fills out those gaps a little bit more, because I don't know, or I didn't know much about Umberlee from Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, because she's not a huge part of the story there. But you do know she's an evil sea goddess. And it might be a little tough for people to understand, why do they worship the evil goddess of the sea? And then you interact with her followers, and that quest plays out, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense now. But I was impressed that they found something that I probably wouldn't have thought to bring in from Baldur's Gate 1 to retain 100 years later within the city, the Temple of Umberlee. And then they integrated it into kind of the main story. You don't have to experience it, but it's directly connected. I thought that was a really well done little callback.
Yeah, in Baldur's Gate 1, you have this idol that was taken And so you talk to the priestess outside of Baldur's Gate, actually, before Worm's Crossing. And then you find the rapscallion that took it and take it back and says, come see me at our temple of the bitch queen, whatever.
Yeah, should be noted. We're not calling her a bitch just on a whim. That is her title within the lore.
Sure. So we
Sure.
So you go to what's wild is that you go to her temple and they're like, we should kill you on sight for being here. Oh, I remember you. Damn.
Thanks for your help.
I was just exploring.
Yeah, it also does feel weird because it's a temple. You can go there for, cleric spells, and they'll identify gear for you, or they'll cast cure wounds. But they also kind of hate you for existing.
Yeah, I did like them though because
because of the dress.
I have a soft spot for evil characters, so.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
And
but let's be honest. There is a deep V cut dress with chains across the chest that you can get for your playable characters, and it's associated. It's what the followers of Umberlee wear. We know exactly why Legion likes this temple.
Yeah, the temple's great, but but I just like, I play Sith. I love Viconia. She's my favorite. I mean, I don't know. I've accepted who I am.
You make it sound like I'm judging you for playing
no.
evil characters in a video game.
I get disappointed more in people like the great characters that I know are great characters like Jarlaxle. Like Jarlaxle in the D&D universe, he's a drow and he comes up, and despite being put down by, Loth and that whole heritage and stuff, he's a self-made man. He is very educated. He is trained. He gets through on his own abilities, but he's not evil. So I don't really care about him. He's not that interesting to me, but he's a very interesting character, but not to me. So, but
I will say there are definitely, Baldur's Gate does a really good job with evil characters and making them kind of make sense. Because there are evil characters in other games that I think, they fall into that cliche of just being evil for evil's sake. But I think the world building done in Baldur's Gate does a much better job of establishing them as kind of more realistic characters with more kind of selfish goals in mind, but not this kind of cartoonishly evil, like, I just want people to suffer because I'm a bad person kind of thing.
One thing that I was expecting to see more of, and there is a connection between Baldur's Gate 1 and 3, but you don't see many kobolds in Baldur's Gate 3. You see like 2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess if you go to the jungle raptor area, those aren't kobolds, they're raptors. So
yeah.
But you do see a kobold in the circus, and he's got a hat and he's talking to you.
I feel like this is this kind of fits in line with our discussion. We were talking about Elder Scrolls and St. Jude, and the idea that those cliff racers were eradicated because of just how much of an annoyance they were, and somebody just being like, you know what, I'm devoting my entire life to getting rid of those. I feel like after the events of Baldur's Gate 1, you could probably expect that there were at least a handful of people who were like, all right, so like kobolds are a problem. Let's just kill them all. And as a result, they are very, very uncommon in the area surrounding Baldur's Gate now. I mean, it's not explicitly stated in anything that I've seen, but it could fit. It could make sense.
Kobolds, even though they're kind of described as like dog-like, I like how Baldur's Gate 3 actually gave them representation of being more reptilian, because they actually have a little bit of dragon.
They're dragon
in them.
king.
Yeah. And as such, because they're really good with working with metal, they're kind of like I wouldn't say they're like dwarves in that regard, but they're like wannabe dwarves, but they're actually really good at what they do. And they like hanging around the dragons because they think of them as like, that's what we want to grow up to be. But they can never be a dragon. But that's,
Right.
you're trying to like logically explain things to a kobold, whatever. But the dragons are like, yeah, they hang out. They're not doing anything. They're almost like a little, security force for my hoard of treasure here. So they don't mind them. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship, inadvertently, because the dragon could care less about them. But that's why we see less and less of them, because they're more concentrated toward the areas where we wouldn't be found to be common. So,
and I think that might be why you kind of see them in the that abandoned temple that the Gith have taken over. It's kind of this, removed location outside the city limits where maybe they can avoid being harassed by people who associate them with the conspiracy from 100 years ago that nearly destroyed Baldur's Gate. They can kind of just live their lives in that temple until the Gith showed up, and then we decided to kill everybody. But yeah, they still exist in the Sword Coast. They're just kind of keeping to themselves a bit. And I think that fits with the lore.
Yeah. Of course, Balduron. Major spoiler here. He's in Baldur's Gate 3. Just not in the form that you would think.
Yeah. He is in Baldur's Gate 3, and if you've played any Baldur's Gate 3, you've met him, but you probably didn't meet him as Baldurin.
Or you may never even know that, because I know that a lot of people who never really understood where those connections were, because you have to play Baldur's Gate 1, and you have to know a little bit more lore than even what Baldur's Gate 1 was trying to tell you. It's kind of that deep lore stuff to really see what Larian was trying to say in that experience. I'm debating whether or not to even say where we find him.
So there is, I will try to dance around this subject as carefully as possible, but there is a side quest available to you in Act 3 that digs into who Baldurin was and the impact that Baldurin still has on Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 3. It is completely optional. It's not directly tied to the main story. Like there's not really any kind of main story element that's driving you to go explore this area. And it takes some effort to figure out the puzzles and like how to actually progress that side quest. So if this all sounds unfamiliar to you, don't worry, you're not alone. The first time I brought this up Legion brought this up with me, I had no idea what he was talking about. And I had to go play this little side quest with a walkthrough to kind of like accelerate the path so that I could catch up and talk to him about it. But yeah, this is it's a well hidden little Easter egg in Baldur's Gate 3, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's intentionally meant to be well hidden for people who know that, because you wouldn't probably appreciate it unless you went through that much effort.
Yeah. I think it's another one of those. It's specifically designed for the people who would appreciate it most. So like the people who really want that lore connection to the first two games are the people who are going to go explore every part of Baldur's Gate 3 and look for it. So yeah. I think it's well done for them to say, let's kind of bury this away in a side quest that requires a bit of effort and has some intense challenge to it that, makes the payoff that much more appreciable if you you've gone through the entire sequence.
Yeah, and of course we've talked about the title of Baldur's Gate, and like it almost doesn't need to be called Baldur's Gate, but I would say Baldur's Gate 3 as a title is probably the most Baldur's Gate appropriate title, because of addressing that in the story.
Yeah, I would say definitely Baldur's Gate 3 within the trilogy so far is the most connected to the city of Baldur's Gate out of any of the games.
Sure. Yeah, because in Baldur's Gate 1, it's more of a scene. It's not the setting. So,
yeah, it's
the story.
It's a point of the story in Baldur's Gate 1. It's at some point you'll find yourself in Baldur's Gate, and even then the elements that play out aren't necessarily hugely linked to Baldur's Gate. It's just that Baldur's Gate happens to be where they're going on. Whereas in Baldur's Gate 3, it feels a lot more like they chose Baldur's Gate for the reasons that it's a big city. It affords them a lot of, resources, and it kind of has this history. There's a lot going on with that city. So there's a lot of reasons to kind of, for the main story of Baldur's Gate 3 to be linked to the city. It doesn't feel like a coincidence in the way that it kind of did in Baldur's Gate 1.
Yeah, geographically, the city of Baldur's Gate is pretty different between 1 and 3. Some of the same things are there, but they're in very different places.
Yep.
So, I was expecting, which the Elfstone Tavern in the original Baldur's Gate is pretty much like right there when you first get to Baldur's Gate. It's like right there. And across from it is the Sorcerer's Sundries. And then cat-a-corner to the Elfstone Tavern is the Blushy Mermaid. In that general direction. So I was kind of expecting that whole little triad of places.
Yeah,
when I
they
went
got a
there.
bit more spread out in Baldur's Gate 3.
And in hindsight, I do think it works better in Baldur's Gate 3 because you're able to kind of put these points of interest that are very interesting in more scattered areas. So you have a reason to want to go to this area. You have a reason. Whereas before, and plus they put the Blushy Mermaid closer to the port.
Yeah,
which
that makes a lot more sense as well.
Yeah. But I think it made more sense in Baldur's Gate 3, like I said, because of spreading it around makes me want to go to those places. But in Baldur's Gate 1, it's almost like they created like these zones. Like they had a residential zone. They had the Flaming Fist zone. They had like I said, just these zones. So I think that's what they were going for in Baldur's Gate 1. But in Baldur's Gate 3, they kind of said, let's just make this an organic city that almost chaos is kind of, because as we build things, it is what it is. We can't just, unless we tear it down, we can't like build something in its place. So you have these hodgepodges of places of, you have a manor next to a graveyard, next to a dye factory or whatever. So
yeah.
I also liked, and maybe I'm in the minority on this, but I kind of liked the fact that they blended Sorceress's Sundries and Ramesses Tower into like one structure in Baldur's Gate 3. Because it almost feels like that would make sense that, after Baldur's Gate 1, depending on how you interact with Ramesses, that tower might be unoccupied for a bit. But given what we know of, the Sword Coast and the way magic users on the Sword Coast tend to be, somebody's going to be taking that place over, and they're probably going to be just as bad as Ramesses is, and probably want to do some more power-seeking kind of things. It almost makes sense that they would try to take over that tower and Sorceress's Sundries to have this kind of concentrated magical power within the city. Like they are the single authority. And then you meet Leroican, and that's kind of his whole thing. He is power hungry and a huge dick about it. And it just fits with, our experience in the Sword Coast with those power hungry magic users who just can never seem to shut it off and are always chasing after that next level of just kind of breaking taboos and accumulating power.
Which we've said should have been Edwin. They should have made that connection. It's there.
I would have loved that. Yeah, I would have been really happy if that was Edwin. And even if he had kind of abandoned his accent and abandoned his connections to Thay and like maintained this kind of low profile, more manipulative strategy, because I think the events of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 kind of showcase that Edwin has a bit of an ego problem, and he's very capable, but if he were to get his ego under check, he would be much more capable. I think that would have been a great kind of continuation of his story, to say that he is now still kind of operating behind the scenes and still working to grow his power, but he's not as flamboyant or attention grabbing as he used to be. And that's probably why he's still alive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Edwin's big thing is he wanted to live. I mean, it was there, Larian. It was right there. And so, like I said, when we're connecting things and not connecting things, I was convinced that was Edwin.
Yeah, that would have been a really nice
Act
one.
1, I was thinking that's Edwin. Mm-hmm.